It's June, baby! You know what that means? Pride Month! Yeah!
Oh, I love Pride. All us gays hanging out together. Just being ourselves. It's great! Oh, I remember my first Pride. I was 22. I was absolutely blasted by about 2:30 in the afternoon. And then I got picked up by this ludicrously hot Spanish doll who proceeded to blast me again. And then she really taught me how to appreciate the lyrics of Gold Dust Woman by Fleetwood Mac.
And did she make you cry? Make you break down? Shatter your illusions of love? And is it over now? Do you somehow pick up the pieces and go home?
Hull's version's better. And of course, with Pride comes Pride Discourse! Yay! Okay, let's see. Kink at Pride?
It's good.
Well, that was easy. Okay, something else then. How about something a bit lighter, a bit less controversial? Cops at Pride. We all agree that they're bad, right? Right? Fine. Let me get comfortable first. I'm more of like a punky fudge. I'm a witch, right? Yeah, like I've got a hat and everything. I'm a witch. Very colourful witch at the moment. Cards up top then. And this really shouldn't come as much a surprise to anyone that's seen any of my other work, even the 2-hour shitpost that was Goats. I don't think cops belong at Pride, but let's be fair, Marquis of Queensberry rules and all that. I'll have a look at a few of the arguments in favour of letting cops into Pride. I'll do a few quick rebuttals of them as we go through, and then we'll get into the reasons behind my reasoning. I'm bad at words. First on the docket is this article here from The Advocate, dated June the 19th, 2018. Why the police should have a place at Pride.
At one of the earliest meetings, leaders asked what they could do to help the community. Some suggested LGBT liberation and equality by destroying the global capitalist system of oppression.
Yes!
While the most vocal and outspoken side has been the anti-cop, very little has come from, for lack of a better way to put it, pro-cop side. Yes, I am about to advocate for police participation in Pride.
Boo! There's two arguments the writer's making in this piece. The first being the classic, there's a few bad apples.
I know there is a belief that there are no good cops that gets passed around among people, and that to me is not only logically wrong, but ideologically and emotionally driven. You can no more have a cop stop a burglary if he's not there than have a cop or department remove and punish a bad officer if they were not aware of it. And frankly, let's be realistic. There will always be bad cops, just like there will always be bad people in any organization.
Breaking out a classic myself here, the end of the phrase, a few bad apples, is that they spoil the batch. And the second is like a weird flex that some shitty people turn up at Pride at times.
Pretty much the only thing the community can agree on generally is gay and lesbian rights. Many want to drop transgender people, many erase bisexual people, and many are offended by the word queer. Some are conservative, some are mainstream liberal, and some are outright Marxist. There are intersectional feminists and TERFs, racists, and Black Lives Matter advocates.
Hi, I'm one of the outright Marxists. Look, getting into debating each of these points gets us bogged down in details that misses the point. Yes, TERFs try regularly to commandeer pride marches. Yes, there's issues of bi-erasure. I'm bi, I kind of know that bit. Racism is an ongoing problem, especially on online dating apps. All of these are serious issues that downright require a full, combined energy and attention to combat. But they're not trying to combat it! They're bringing this up purely as an obfuscation, to normalise the issues we have with the police, to run cover for them, arguing that there's bad people within a chunk of humanity that live within the ever-shifting, beautiful, full spectrum of human attraction, means that we have to accept the presence of a cadre of those that voluntarily chose an organisation whose sole purpose is the oppressive enforcement of the state's will is a stretch. This article is from before 2020, in long ago. Namely before the George Floyd mass protests and uprisings and wider knowledge of issues that the police have. Maybe just like the littlest, tiniest, barest minimum benefit of the doubt is warranted. No, not really, but let's see if we can find something a bit more modern. There's a better word than that. Contemporary. Yeah. I'm good at words. I'm a clever girl. So how about this one? Police deserve to participate in Pride festivities by Adam Zivo for the National Post, a Canadian thingy. Published on the 25th of June 2022.
For a number of years, police have been banned from many Canadian Pride festivals.
Good.
Activists allege that having a police presence would be inappropriate, owing to historical and ongoing problems with racism, homophobia, and transphobia.
True, yes.
But the police should be allowed back into Pride on practical grounds. If you want to change an institution, you need to engage with it.
God damn it. This guy's arguments boil down to other things did bad in past, but we did it to forgive. Same for cops.
When it comes to accountability, yes, the police were awful to LGBTQ people, but they were no more awful than many other institutions that existed in a time when homophobia and transphobia were the norm.
But there's cops already here!
Police are still present at these festivals to maintain public safety.
And a classic of the cop apologia genre, however will they improve if we don't work with them?
Police departments can try to improve themselves in these areas, but can only progress so fast if working alone. Progress can be achieved more quickly if the police are helped by activists who can build bridges and are willing to meet with police and run workshops, conduct interviews, give presentations, and learn the cultural and institutional constraints that inhibit change.
Quickfire rebuttals. 1. How many of these institutions solely exist for the purposes of oppression? Because if they share that with cops, then they should fuck off into the sun too. 2. See, 1. Cops' sole purpose is oppression. You can't change that fundamental purpose of them. 3. I don't particularly want those there either. But unfortunately, we can't really kick them out if they're just standing around. At least we can't yet. 4. See, 2. So that's a slot for the day sorted. Let's get some veggies downers. By veggies, I obviously mean history. I'm okay at words. History veggies! Oh, it's gone. Whew. So cops, they suck. They've always sucked, and they will continue to suck for as long as cops exist. The first, group in history that we could consider a police force, that we've got any decent information on, comes to us courtesy of fascist favourite Sparta. Sparta sucked too. The mythologised figure of a great and honourable Spartan soldier embodying a kind of farcical masculinity, is just that, a myth. See also Roman legionaries, Vikings, the British Empire, and the fucking Wehrmacht. There's another pattern here with these as well. Look! Slavery, 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 and slavery. This last one is a terracotta image of Spartan slaves known as helots, working in a mine from around the 7th century BCE. Historians are a bit divided as to who they are and where they came from, but we do know how they were kept in line. Cops. Basically, cops. These classical cops were called the crypteria, and no, they've got nothing to do with any kind of cryptocurrency bullshit that just sprang to mind on that name. Hi, Tangent Curry here. So with that name, I figured I kind of had to look it up, mainly out of morbid curiosity, and I was right. Here it is listed on a gigantic web form of crypto scams just from this year. I mean, all crypto scams, we know this by now, right? Yeah. And if you're thinking, well, it can't be, it's just like capitalism scam too. Another thing that caught my eye in this gigantic list, I mean, I can't claim the veracity of this website, right, 'cause I just Googled it, is that outright fascist crypto scams, there's not just one, there's two! Like, the first one added, like, Forex onto it to make it seem like it had some level of legitimacy or something. But the other one's just, like, fascism. Just fascism. Like, it really goes to show you can't underestimate the credulity of these fucks. The Crypteria was specifically a secret police force. They underwent even more brutal training than the already murderous standard Spartan soldier training. One has to imagine that somehow involved even more gay sex. Because those phalanxes were fucking, like, a lot. Doesn't rectify them in any way, of course. They still sucked. Really bad guys, too. The end product of all this were men who hunted down rabble-rousers. People who wanted, freedom, and just straight murdered them. And if that was all they did, that would be bad enough, right? Well, not to them. Their death squad-like behaviour often involved lying in wait and ambushing any helot that passed their way and killing them too. And during the night, according to Plutarch,
they came down into the highways and killed every helot whom they caught.
During the day, they would murder them in the fields they were working. The entirety of Spartan society relied on its slavery. Even their much vaunted military might was largely comprised of helot soldiers. To get a good idea of the ratios we're talking about here, one of the many other groups that joined those famous 300 Spartan soldiers at the Battle of Thermopylae, the hot gays, were 900 helots. Now all this is literally ancient history. What does it have to do with modern policing 2,500 years later? Well, let's get into the origin of modern policing then. Oh shit, Pygmalion's coming. Looks nothing like me. Modern policing is most commonly attributed to the founding of the London Metropolitan Police in 1829. However, it wasn't born in a vacuum. The Dublin Police Force, created in 1786, as a means of colonial enforcement for British rule. This culminated, although the two forces were never merged, in the founding of the Royal Irish Constabulary in 1822. The structure of the RIC wasn't based off any previous policing force, but instead on the rifle brigades of the British Army. This means, in a quite literal sense, they were an occupying military. However, like all police, their main role was the protection of capital. In this case, British absentee landlords who owned the vast majority of Ireland's arable land. The RIC kicked people out of their homes in the name of profit for a callous, uncaring capitalist. Because police have never changed. This absentee landlordism and the demand for extractable goods is the cause of the Great Hunger, aka the Irish potato famine. Ireland was producing more food than its population needed. However, most of that was being paid in rent. What the average Irish person was forced to live on was potatoes. They're hardy, easy to grow, cheap, nutritious. So when the potato famine came to Ireland, that food source was cut off. But the landlords in mainland Britain valued their profits more than millions of human lives. And the RIC were the ones that made sure those profits continued. Similar famines, like the multiple ones in India, played out in very similar ways. The greed of a colonising capitalist class condemning tens of millions of people to a slow, agonising death. Much like what fossil fuel companies are doing to the entire planet right now. Their original role, of course, encompassed further duties.
Aside from the detection of crime, the RIC's main duties were political. As well as the suppression of Irish separatists, the RIC was also charged with impeding any movement which sought to challenge the status quo. Trade unionists seeking better working conditions, suffragettes campaigning for the vote, and Irish language activists all suffered harassment, intimidation, arrest, and violent assault at the hands of the RIC.
The RIC didn't just leave it at indirect murder either. As liberation movements grew across Ireland, so did their repertoire of oppression. Torture, political assassination, and even trophy kills became tools in their arsenal as the fight for freedom grew hot. During the War for Independence, the RIC were involved in multiple atrocities, including massacres, targeted sexual violence, and the burning of entire towns like Cork and Balbriggan. Balbriggan was burnt down on the night of the 21st of September, 1920. 5 years later, my grandmother would be born in that very same town. But Kiri, I hear some hypothetical commentator ask, just because the London Metropolitan Police are based off them doesn't mean that all police share this same horrific core. And whilst the vast majority of police forces are based off the London Metropolitan, there are some that aren't. Some police forces in the USA, for example, were based off patrols that hunted down to capture, if not kill, escaped slaves. Because cops haven't changed. At heart, they're still the crypteria. So that's a brief history of the police. But I haven't yet gone into how that intersects with pride, so we'll do that now, I guess. Can't think of a better transition. I mean, mine's going pretty well, but I'm bad at words again. I suppose I could make this worse. Yeah, why not? Please do like, comment and subscribe, and share the video around as well. And if you're feeling extra cool, why not head over to my Patreon and help me survive in this capitalist dystopia we find ourselves in. I'm very poor. I reckon that was awkward enough, yeah. On the 28th of June 1969, the New York Police Department conducted a raid on a small dive bar called Stonewall. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you didn't know here. A riot started that lasted 3 nights. A lot of super base things happened, basically. The potted history makes it seem like it was a one-time thing, but that's far from the truth. Police raids on gay bars across New York, across the USA, across the world led up to this, going back in time for as long as there have been cops to do so. The police are the enforcers of the state. They embody its most violent wishes and tendencies. The first Pride happened the following year, a direct statement of resistance, defiance to the cops and politicians that were making queer people's lives as difficult as they could be. The march through Manhattan in 1970 wasn't just called Pride, it was the Gay Pride Liberation March. Pride in who we are, in proud defiance of a society that tells us to be ashamed. Liberation because we're not free. The laws they enforce are meant to bind the undesirable for the benefit of the system they uphold. London held its first Pride in 1972, on the closest Saturday to the anniversary of Stonewall. Pride marches have taken place across the world and often in the harshest of circumstances. They've been banned in many countries, but people still protest for their liberation. The various cops of the state they live under meet them with violence. The police necessarily represent the most reactionary elements of a state. They exist to keep us in line. The 80s saw a widespread reactionary movement against the LGBTQ+ community. The AIDS crisis was used as a propaganda weapon against us, to paint us as morally sick, contagious, and dangerous to children in society. Groomer rhetoric really picked up steam during this period too, insinuating that anyone not cis-het is inherently unsafe for children to be around. This led to Section 28 being passed here in the UK, a ban on children being taught anything about queerness, and thus letting bigotry ferment. This was all whilst they were leaving us to die. Cops don't care about you. Their fascist training teaches them that everyone is an enemy to them. In modern times, all types of hate crime have increased in number and veracity to an alarming degree, from around 2015 to today. The police have an alarming rate of membership in fascist groups that commit these acts of bigoted violence. Rage Against the Machine weren't lying to you when they said some of those who work forces are the same that burn crosses. Like all fascists, they also peddle extreme misogyny. That 40% number me and other leftist creators half-jokingly tell you to Google is only the percentage of cops who admit to being domestic abusers. That means that the number as to who actually are is probably much higher. We do know that if a cop is accused of being an abuser in the UK, there is only a 20% chance of them even being fired, let alone face any of what we're told is justice. In the worst cases, we end up with a horrific assault and murder of Sarah Everard by London Metropolitan Police Officer Wayne Couzens. The nature of the power relations we have with them and the way they try to protect their own from facing any kind of accountability means that Narcissus is correct in saying that every racist is a cop without a badge. But now they're supposed to be allowed to participate in a protest for our liberation? No! If Pride is to be inclusive, we can't allow in those that disproportionately harm people we should be in community with. Intersections of oppression in our capitalist, white supremacist societies have led to trans people of colour being the most vulnerable population on the planet, and to a large extent that is because of the police. The raid on Stonewall, a mafia-ran pub, was done under the guise of policing public decency laws that strictly directed what clothes people could wear, similar to what is being proposed in Florida, Tennessee and other US states right now. The cops knew about the mafia, of course. They didn't care about that. They were there targeting trans people of colour, and trans people of colour fought back. Our rights as queer people were won by their struggle, and we can't abandon them for some misguided attempt at assimilation. They need our solidarity. Not because of what happened in the past, but because of what's happening right now. Because they're human beings trying to live their goddamn lives. If we can't even do the bare fucking minimum of care, protection and respect, then we don't deserve Pride. Pride discourse is often just a way to obfuscate from actual issues. People arguing on Twitter about kink at Pride, which, reminder, it's really good, takes our mind off the fact that the Tories are trying to institute another Section 28, to take away from how they're trying to legislate us away in many US states, to take away the near constant attacks on the people we should be caring for. Solidarity is how we get through this. During the Stonewall riots, a solidarity riot broke out in a small prison across the street, the Women's House of Detention. Many of the women in there heard what was going on and recognised their shared struggle against state and capitalist oppression and joined in. One of those women was bass legend Afeni Shakur Davis, political activist, Black Panther member and Tupac's mum. Solidarity is what broke Section 28. During the miners' strikes of the 80s, gay rights campaigners actively supported the unions, recognising their shared struggle against state and capitalist oppression that was trying to destroy them both. In 2003, Section 28 was ripped up by a neoliberal Labour government because of direct pressure from former and then current miners. members of those same unions gay liberation movements allied themselves with. We need to have solidarity with those of us who are targeted by the society we live in. Internationally, we should be throwing our support to the many, many movements that aim to curb the oppression people face. The Stop Cop City campaign in Atlanta, Georgia, for instance, is aiming to help all of us. Cop City is a planned gigantic police training facility aimed at urban warfare. And warfare is the word for what they want to teach. This place will train police from all over the USA and potentially internationally, with the techniques that Israeli police use to target Palestinians, with their explicit aims being ethnic cleansing. I would love to live in the world where Pride could solely be a celebration, but we're not there yet. It has to still be a protest. But that doesn't mean we take the joy out of being ourselves with each other. It doesn't mean we stop dancing. There's power in our queer joy, and we can use that joy to fight for the joy of others. Because in the words of Emma Goldman,
I want freedom, the right to self-expression, everybody's right to beautiful, radiant things. Anarchism meant that to me, and I would live it in spite of the whole world. Prisons, persecution, everything. Yes, even in spite of the condemnation of my own closest comrades, I would live my beautiful ideal.
cops do not belong at Pride, because when states get more reactionary, which they're doing, and they start to target more and more of us, those cops in the rainbow stab vests who are dancing beside you now will be the same ones destroying your life, like they already do to so many. Simply put, the only handcuffs that belong at Pride are ours. I should really start on OnlyFans. But until I do, you can support me on Patreon. Every little helps on that. The names coming up here are the patrons that currently are wonderful enough to give me some money. If you don't have any money, I fully understand. Yes, it's all a bit shit at the moment. So liking, commenting on and sharing the video around is a great help as well. Also, big thank to all the contributors I had. Also, a gigantic shout out to Morrigan for giving the script the once over to make sure it wasn't absolute trash. She did the same for the last video as well, but I was deranged from serotonin syndrome at that point, so I kind of forgot. You can tell by the colour correction and the editing of that. But yes, thank you. I'm sorry for missing our last video. I love you, babe. I do. Go check her out as well. Now, if you excuse me, I think I'm going to film something not for YouTube. See you next time.